Mac users have long boasted, "My Macs don't get viruses." For years, it was mostly true. Macs were niche, users were careful, and malware authors focused on Windows. But as Macs became more popular, hackers started noticing. From harmless pranks in the early 2000s to sophisticated ransomware and supply chain attacks, macOS has a history that many users would rather forget. Today, we're walking through every major macOS virus, exploring how each one worked, the chaos it caused, and the lessons Mac users learned the hard way. Buckle up. This is a story of trust, panic, and the occasional digital disaster. 1. Leap A. Leap A, also called Oomp, was the first widely recognized macOS malware. It spread through iChat, disguised as a harmless file, often appearing as an image. Users who opened it found themselves unknowingly forwarding it to their friends, creating a digital chain reaction. At first, it did almost nothing. No files were deleted, no passwords stolen, just quiet propagation. But the reaction was huge. Mac users who had been boasting online about their invulnerability suddenly realized their computers could get infected. Headlines screamed warnings, blogs posted frantic guides on how to remove the virus, and suddenly, trust became a commodity. Leap A didn't need to be destructive to make history. Its mere existence shattered the myth that Macs were untouchable. It proved that even a small, quiet script could make people panic, and that was enough for malware to leave its mark. 2. MacDefender. MacDefender and its cousins weren't traditional viruses. They were scam software that preyed on fear. Users browsing the web would suddenly see alarming pop-ups claiming their Mac was infected and urging them to pay for software to remove the threats. The interface looked polished, the warning sounded urgent, and the instructions seemed legitimate. Many users panicked and paid, only to realize later that the software itself was the problem. This was the first major scareware wave on macOS. Apple had to respond quickly, patching Safari to prevent automatic downloads of malicious files. The story highlighted an important lesson. Malware doesn't always need to break or steal things. Sometimes the illusion of danger is just as effective. Humorously, this episode taught Mac users that being too cautious could sometimes backfire, turning your own anxiety into a vulnerability. 3. Flashback. Flashback was a Trojan that silently infected over 600,000 Macs worldwide, marking the first massive macOS malware outbreak. It exploited a Java vulnerability, allowing it to install itself simply when users visited certain websites. No downloads, no clicks, no warnings. Infected machines became part of a botnet, controlled remotely and capable of sending information back to an unknown operator. The scale of Flashback caught Apple by surprise. Although a patch existed, many users hadn't applied it. Suddenly, Macs that were thought to be safe were quietly compromised, often without their owners noticing. Flashback taught a stark lesson. Even diligent users are vulnerable if software isn't kept updated. Media coverage labeled it the Mac Zombie Army, and tech forums were flooded with users panicking over how invisible the malware really was. For the first time, the public realized that Macs were no longer exempt from the realities of modern malware. 4. XcodeGhost. XcodeGhost targeted developers rather than users. A compromised version of Apple's Xcode compiler was downloaded by developers in certain regions, embedding malware into apps that were then published on the App Store. Millions of users unknowingly downloaded infected applications. The malware could collect device information, report user activity, and communicate with remote servers. What made XcodeGhost so insidious was its subtlety. The apps appeared normal, performed their advertised functions, and yet contained malicious code. Users trusted the App Store, believing it was a walled garden safe from harm. XcodeGhost exposed the fallacy of that belief, demonstrating that malware could infiltrate even curated official software channels. It was a wake-up call that security could no longer rely solely on the reputation of the platform. 5. KeRanger. KeRanger marked macOS's first fully functional ransomware attack. Hidden inside a compromised version of Transmission, a popular torrent client, KeRanger waited silently for a full day before activating. Then, without fanfare, it encrypted user files and demanded Bitcoin for decryption. Personal photos, work documents, and irreplaceable files were suddenly inaccessible. Mac users were forced to confront a reality long familiar to Windows users. Ransomware is real, and Macs are fair game. KeRanger was a wake-up call about backups, responsible downloads, and the importance of vigilance. Suddenly, a platform that had once felt safe was now a potential hostage situation for anyone who ignored security updates or trusted random downloads. The attack was a chilling reminder that money, not mischief, mischief often drives malware. 6. ThiefQuest. ThiefQuest, sometimes called EvilQuest, combined ransomware with data theft in a particularly cruel twist. Spread primarily through pirated software, it quietly exfiltrated files before encrypting them, ensuring that even if users didn't pay the ransom, sensitive information was gone. Users who thought they were saving money by avoiding paid apps instead ended up paying with their privacy. EvilQuest made a statement: modern macOS malware was sophisticated, dual-purpose, and patient. It highlighted the dangers of trusting unverified sources. Some victims reported losing critical documents and personal information simultaneously, a scenario that few could recover from. The malware demonstrated that convenience could be the biggest risk on a Mac, and that even small choices, like downloading a cracked app, could have enormous consequences. 7. Silver Sparrow. Silver Sparrow was unusual, not because of what it did, but because of what it didn't do. It infected Intel and Apple Silicon Macs and communicated with a command and control server, yet it remained dormant. No files were stolen, no data encrypted, no ransom demanded. Its silent, waiting nature unnerved security researchers. Over 30,000 Macs worldwide were infected before Apple intervened, revoking certificates and blocking its spread. Silver Sparrow demonstrated a new level of sophistication. Malware that doesn't need to act immediately can still be a threat. It reminded users that sometimes uncertainty is scarier than chaos, and that vigilance isn't optional. 8. Ongoing threats. Today, macOS malware has evolved into subtle, profit-driven operations. Modern threats include adware, ransomware, browser hijackers, supply chain attacks, and malicious extensions. They often target trust rather than technical flaws, exploiting the assumption that Macs are safe. Users who ignore updates, download software from unknown sources, or skip backups remain vulnerable. These modern threats highlight that security is a habit, not a guarantee. Macs are safer than many other platforms, but the consequences of complacency are real. Stolen data, encrypted files, and breached privacy. The safe Mac myth is no longer absolute. Vigilance is now the best defense. Warnings for Mac users: no computer is invincible. Even Macs, which are generally more secure, can be compromised if users let their guard down. Always update macOS and installed apps. Avoid pirated or unverified software. Be cautious with browser extensions and back up important files regularly. Remember, malware doesn't need to be loud or destructive. It often works silently, taking what you value most without warning. Overconfidence is the easiest vulnerability of all. From Leap A to Flashback, XcodeGhost to Silver Sparrow, macOS has faced a wide spectrum of malware. No machine is untouchable, and no user is exempt from risk. Staying informed, cautious, and backed up is the only real protection. Sip your coffee, enjoy your Mac, but stay vigilant, because the next threat could be sitting quietly in the background, waiting for its moment. Thanks for watching, and seriously, back up your files.